Welcome, listeners. We're Shedding Light.
We're three moms on a mission, Candy,
Susie,
and Angela, and we're hell-bent on shedding light on missing persons cold cases across Canada
in an effort to help families find the missing piece of the puzzle.
Hi, this is Mary. I've been listening to these girls recording in my basement for hours, and I have to warn you, there's some very foul language and adult content going on. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, listeners. This is our wrap-up episode, but it is far from it. As we have mentioned previously, we are dedicating an entire season to one missing persons cold case, but that does not mean we have finished with this case. We will continue to keep the lines of communication open and follow up on any new leads. We will not close the file until we bring the missing home.
Welcome to Season 1, Episode 5, Melanie Ethier, 24 years later. We think it's important to start out by saying that sometimes we all need a little comic relief. We're all human, and please know that when you hear us have a little nervous giggle or laughter or a huge belly laugh, we mean no disrespect at all whatsoever. We've had more sleepless nights and we've shed more tears working on this podcast than we care to admit. And when we goof around, it's only to reset ourselves so we can carry on. It gets pretty intense sometimes. And again, we mean no disrespect.
Thanks, Susie. In most crimes, they say that you should look at the previous 2 weeks' actions of the victim. But in this case, because we believe that Melanie's disappearance might be a case of mistaken identity, we need to look at the possible intended victims and what was going on in their lives. And in this case, there may be as many as 3 separate but potentially intended victims. Melanie, of course, was the actual victim. 24 years ago is a long time for anyone to recall what they were doing in the weeks and months leading up to Melanie's disappearance, but thankfully we have a general idea of some goings-on in their lives during this time.
We've spoken about Sarah a lot, so we will start with her. Melanie's disappearance seems to have driven Sarah to a very dark place. What happened to Melanie may have been a huge turning point in Sarah's life and sent her over the edge. She went a little crazy. Some of her friends completely dissociated with her as she reportedly began referring to herself as Melanie. But what about before Melanie's disappearance? What was going on in her life? A few close individuals of Sarah shared with us that she went to the police with information on a group of 3 boys. Maybe the trio we refer to, maybe not.
Yeah, who knows? And another woman from the area reached out to us and told us that in the days before Melanie's disappearance, a particular police officer was asking people about Melanie as though concerned for her safety and as though he knew something might happen. So was this concern because Sarah had gone to the police? And not only was he therefore concerned about her safety, but for Melanie's as well, given that the 2 girls were mistaken for one another on a regular basis.
This woman also shared that Sarah had had a few arguments with one youth in particular, whose name she did share. And no doubt it was one of these altercations that was witnessed by another party by the church corners near Melanie's house. This local woman is quoted saying to us, "For a fact, I talked to Sarah. She acted so brave and tough. She wasn't afraid of anyone."
And sources have shared with us that Sarah owed a drug dealer money. Were they out for debt payment?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe they wanted to teach her a lesson and maybe things got out of hand.
And we've seen that before. So did Sarah have information on someone that was so damaging that it could have changed their entire life? Perhaps maybe have sent them to jail.
Maybe it was in retaliation for something. There are a few reasons why someone may have targeted Sarah, but are these reasons enough to kill who they thought was her? I don't know.
Did they think they were abducting Sarah, and by the time they realized it was Melanie, it was too late to go back and let her go? Did Did they panic?
And that's why we
All
say
good questions.
mistaken identity.
Mhm.
Well, the second possible intended victim was the third young Black girl in town. And we were fortunate enough to be able to speak with her to discuss the impact Melanie's disappearance also had on her life. She continues to be haunted by Melanie's disappearance to this day. And she was more than willing to speak with us and very forthcoming in our conversation. We would like to apologize to her, first of all, because after the last episode aired, although we did not name her, it's a small community and it was not difficult for locals to figure out who she was. So this has drawn attention to her, and she's been receiving unwanted personal messages that are very, very overwhelming for her. It's a double-edged sword because we want to share all details, but we do not want to harm anyone's reputation or cause any undue stress to any individuals. So we ask that you please respect her privacy. She's so graciously decided to speak with us and share her feelings and recollections, as well as clear the air on some information we were given that was incorrect.
So, would you describe for the listeners what it was like growing up in a small northern Ontario town, being one of the very few Black people in town?
It was tough. It was really tough.
Yeah.
And all of us, we actually all got to know each other. So me, Mel, Sarah, there was a little group of us.
Right. So you did you attend the same school?
No, we didn't.
You
And
went to school with Sarah, though, I do believe.
I went to school with Sarah. That's right.
Okay.
Did you find that people were mean or really pointed it out, or were you really racist, basically?
You know what? I think my mom did a good job of sheltering me from a lot of it.
Oh, good.
There were some few major incidents there, but for the most part, it was okay.
So you said you knew Melanie.
Yeah.
Can you describe her?
She's the sweetest girl in the world. That's it. That's all, Like I was saying to you ladies, of all three of us, should not have been her.
Oh.
we hear she was like a little angel, eh?
Yeah, we all came from similar backgrounds. So our moms, funnily enough, our moms all look the same too. I don't know if you ladies knew
Really?
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that.
that. All of our moms are white, brown-haired Irish ladies.
Wow. Eh? So if you described her as just being basically an angel, did you have many interactions with her, or just kind of knew of each other? Like, did you guys ever hang out?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
Because both of our dads are from Africa. So both of us at one point, we were trying to look up our fathers. So that was something that we worked on together.
So when you heard she went missing, what was your reaction?
It's scary.
Yeah.
Because everyone was saying at the very time it was racially motivated.
Oh my goodness.
They were saying that then.
They were saying that from the very first day. That's what was being said.
Wow.
But I did not believe that at all.
What were the thoughts running through your head at the time? Like, why? How would this have happened to her? Like, what were you?
Because I was in the thick of it, I was like, what did Sarah do? My first thought, what did Sarah
Really,
do?
eh?
Yeah.
So you knew Sarah. Can you describe her?
She was, we grew up together as well. And she was a badass. She was always in trouble. Sarah was definitely, she was in with the good crowd sometimes and in with the bad crowd sometimes, like most of us teen girls.
Yeah. Yeah. And types of trouble, like drugs, alcohol.
Yeah, drugs for sure, alcohol. We were always partying together. I think our moms kind of washed their hands of us.
Did she have a boyfriend?
I don't remember. I feel like she didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a long time ago.
So no boyfriend that you know of that could have been the bad influence on her?
None that I remember.
How did Sarah react after Melanie disappeared?
Like a crazy person. And I remember a couple nights after Mel went missing, there was a bowling alley in Hellebury. And we were all there. And Sarah was on the corner telling everybody that she was Mel.
Why do you think she did that?
telling people, I think she got herself into some trouble.
So you think that she was scared, so she didn't want anybody to know she was Sarah.
That's absolutely right.
But why pick Melanie? Because Melanie's missing.
Why not?
Yeah, I guess because nobody knew what happened. Melanie was a runaway or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay, yeah, I can.
Why do you think she was? Why do you think she was scared?
Because she got herself into some trouble and she owed money. And
do you know if she hung around the trio that we speak of, the two younger boys at all?
I don't remember at all. No, an odd match if she did.
Why do you think that?
Well, because I had the run-in with them at the pool hall in New Liskeard.
What did they do?
Describe your run-in.
It was a very racially charged run-in. He's like, I'm going to kill all the niggers. And I seem to remember that he had said, I'm coming back with a gun in my truck or something like that. And then we all left. Like, we all went to my aunt's house down the street.
Oh, my goodness.
Did
How scary.
Any of the kids that were with you that night, did they know who he was?
Yeah, it's this very small town, so everybody knew everybody.
Yeah. So we talked about Sarah, how she reacted. Did she ever tell you why she was so scared to be Sarah after Melanie went missing?
No, honestly, I don't think any of us really associated with her after Melanie went missing.
Because she was acting so strange?
She was acting strange. And then I want to say within weeks, she had moved to North Bay.
Okay.
Like, everything happened really fast.
Right.
And see, we talked to her mom, and her mom said that they didn't move until 1998. But you think that she perhaps went by herself?
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Are you comfortable? Because when you say you can't remember it, and I know some of the listeners are going to say, well, why can't she remember? Can you discuss why? Because, you had the stroke and stuff. So I think they should hear.
Yeah, no. Back in 2014, I had HELLP syndrome, having my last baby. So when I had a stroke with it, so that wiped out a lot of long-term.
Wow.
But I also think, like, growing up, when traumatic things happen, and it was traumatic, you tend to block a lot of things out. Mm-hmm. I have to keep going back to my police records and remember what was said, because it was very scary. For a long time, Sarah and I were both under police surveillance, and the time I wasn't living at home, so I didn't have an advocate for me.
Oh.
How many times do you think you were questioned by the police?
So many. I honestly don't think they've ever given me all my reports, because I have reread them.
So she must have been around in town for a little while after anyway.
Yeah.
And hitchhiking, did she hitchhike?
Yes. I think we all did in that little small town.
And also, I mentioned that I heard that you had extensions, but do you want to clarify that so everybody knows the truth?
The length of this hair right now is the length I've always had. I've never had extensions ever.
Okay. Sorry for mentioning that, because I was under the impression, but I'm glad we got it cleared up.
No, it's all good.
What is your gut feeling on the situation?
Like I've said from day one, Sarah needs to come forward. I have spent many years also trying to track her down, because, as much as it was scary for all of us, I think a lot of people from New Liskeard say it should have been me or Sarah.
So you feel like we do that she possibly holds the key as to why somebody could have been after her and why it was likely a case of mistaken identity, right?
Yeah.
So you do think you feel that the victim was targeted, but it was a case of mistaken identity.
Yep, absolutely, 100%.
And it was not a random act of...
Nope, not at all. How can we track Sarah down?
Well, did you listen to our last episode?
I did.
So in our last episode, we kind of put it out there. So anybody living in the Vancouver area, working with street women or volunteering at a shelter or working at a shelter or a drug rehab or whatever. So you said something kind of interesting when we asked if you were aware if Sarah had any affiliation with the trio, as we call them, the uncle and the two brothers, and you said it would be far-fetched. Why did you say that?
Well, because they didn't like Black people. That was the incident in the pool hall. So, but you know what? I do believe she was selling drugs for somebody, and it could very well have been them.
Yeah, because that's the thing, right? They wouldn't care if they're making money off somebody, even if they hated them.
I really want to look at my police reports. I remember they came to the school and they called us down, and there was a lot of questions. And like every time we went out of town, we would have to check in with the police and say, I'm going to be going out of town, so I'll be here, because every time somebody saw us outside New Liskeard, oh, I saw Melanie here, I saw Melanie there. That went on for a very long time.
So do you feel like that was the main reason why they had check-ins, or do you feel like they were concerned for your safety because maybe they suspected mistaken identity?
Yeah, I think it's probably 50-50.
I'm sure that at the school at the time, it was probably pretty tense after Melanie went missing. I'm sure everybody in the school was nervous that there was someone on the loose.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It was a very scary time. Because we didn't know. We didn't know what was going on.
What would be really, really interesting is for you to recall, and for somebody to recall for Sarah, what transpired in your lives the last 2 weeks before Melanie went missing. Like what could have triggered somebody, because they always say when somebody goes missing, watch and see what they did for the prior 2 weeks that could have had something to do with their disappearance. But we are pretty sure it wasn't Melanie who was targeted. So we'll look at Sarah and you. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So if you can talk to your friends and ask them what they recall about the last 2 weeks, or if they'd speak to us.
What I say is, if you have anything regarding the podcast, you need to contact the ladies and they will filter accordingly. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
I felt good from the day you messaged me. I'm like, maybe somebody will get somewhere.
Yeah, we hope.
We're just hoping this is the year that we bring her home.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to talk to Sarah. That is my mission right now, is to track her down. And hope. I think, to me personally, my gut tells me that is the key to the whole thing. I'm surprised that the police aren't doing more
to find her.
Absolutely.
I know.
We need to maybe ask that question.
And we're just hoping that our podcast reaches the right person.
Well, the fact that the hair extensions comment was made in error just goes to show you an example of how stories can get distorted after they're repeated so many times, eh, girls?
Yeah.
And that was me that said it, and I apologize profusely. I mistaken. It was a mistake I had. Sorry.
Sounds like this young lady knew Sarah quite well, hung out with many of the same crowd.
So how might it be possible this young woman was the target?
Well, remember the altercation she had with one of the brothers of the trio? He had yelled the racial slurs at her and threatened her outside the pool hall.
Would that altercation have been enough to target her?
Maybe. When that person saw Melanie, they thought it was this young lady and they'd just have a little fun.
I can't imagine they'd target her for murder after, an altercation like that, but who knows?
Maybe it was a crime of opportunity. Maybe something went wrong and their intention was just to scare her. It is a plausible theory.
Yeah.
And then we come to our third potential intended victim. We have wanted to talk about this in previous episodes, but decided against it because it could have caused this person a lot of unwanted exposure. You may recall in earlier episodes, we mentioned the possibility of there being 3 separate potential intended victims. We were not willing to risk another person's privacy. However, this person contacted us and agreed to do an interview. When we talk about mistaken identity, we have been quiet about one person in particular.
So, hi there. Can you please tell our listeners what your name is?
Melanie Ethier.
Wow. Melanie Ethier. What year were you born, Mel?
1979.
So almost the same age as the Melanie Ethier we've been telling the story about. Yeah.
And did you go to the same school as the other Melanie Ethier?
Yes.
So how'd that work out?
When they called either of us to the office, they used our middle names instead of our last names. So for me, it was Melanie Louise, and for her, it was Melanie Nadia. That's how we knew who they were talking about.
Right.
So what compelled you to come forward and reach out to us, Melanie?
I just want to help, try to find her.
Have you been listening to the podcast?
Yep, I listened to it the other night.
So after Melanie went missing, what happened?
An officer came to the school and pulled me out of class and told me that he had reason to believe that I was the target that night and not Mel. And I remember kind of chuckling and saying, like, really? Because, like, there's a huge difference. Like, I'm short, fat, and white, and she was tall, slim, and black. Like, come on, man. Like, really? But he had reasons to believe that because I was friends with the trio's, one of the boys from the trio's girlfriend, that maybe I knew something, which I don't think I did. I never really hung out with them. But he had reason to believe that I might know something, and they wanted to get me, I guess. And when I mentioned, like, the difference, I don't know, this was a long time ago, but I think he had said something, well, maybe it wasn't them. Maybe it was somebody else they knew that did it. Like, that would have went, you know what, do you understand what I mean?
Based off that somebody else could have maybe went based just off of the name and not actually knowing you. Is that what you mean? So if I said,
didn't know there was two Melanie Ethiers. Like, when I applied for my job 6 years ago, like, they couldn't wait till I came in for my interview because they thought, holy crap, Mel Ethier, applied here. Like, a lot of people weren't aware that there was two of us.
Okay.
But
that makes more sense. That makes more sense to me because, I mean, after we chatted before, I thought, how would they know, knowing physically looking at a person's skin color, how would you ever get somebody mixed up? But if somebody else was involved and didn't know and they just said, hey, this Mel Ethier, I think she knows something, go get her. I don't know.
But there was one other connection as well, wasn't there, Mel?
Yeah. That he was, the guy they murdered was my mom's cousin. And I lived in Thornlow. He lived in Thornlow in the country. But he was older. Like, I knew who he was. He was always nice to me when we did, come face to face. He knew who I was too, obviously, but we weren't close. Like, I knew he was my mom's cousin, like, which is my cousin too, I guess. But because he was older, like, I didn't hang out with him or anything, but I seen him often.
So you hung out with the boys still, even after he was murdered, because you were unaware of who murdered him at that point, correct?
Oh, yeah. It's kind of like my one friend dated, and then my other friend dated. So, like, we hung out, but to say, like, a lot, no. There's only a couple of us. Like, if you guys know Thornlow at all, it was very small. Like, we hung out with who we had because we didn't have very much.
Yeah. Right. I think one important thing that listeners would know is how you feel about the rumor that went around that Melanie and were friends and that he was probably telling her something and that's why she went missing. How does that make you feel, or does that make sense to you? You can kind of...
I don't see that happening. Like, I didn't know Mel per se, like, hang out with her. Like, she knew who I was. I knew who she was. I didn't really know her, but I don't see, like, the person that she was. She was a good kid at school. Like, she had a head on her shoulders. I don't see her hanging out with her. Like, I really don't.
No, neither do we.
No, like, I always thought that rumor was, like, bogus because I really don't. I don't get.
Well, is it bogus or is it based on something? Because maybe, I heard that the person they were out to get them because of this, and she was friends with her, but they got the wrong person
with her. I didn't hang out with her or any of her friends. So like, I'm not saying it never happened. I don't know. I wasn't there. I find it hard to believe. Like, I don't know.
Right. So the mistaken identity thing to us makes a lot of sense, whether it was Sarah, you, or the other Black girl in town for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And stories get misconstrued over the years, right? Or things get told. So without the missing piece, we don't know. Just to kind of elaborate a little bit on when the police came to see you and said they thought that maybe you were the target. What types of things were they telling you to be concerned about or be aware of, or what were they suggesting you do?
They told me to use the buddy system, not go anywhere alone. Use the buddy system.
And did you ever confront the brother of the trio and ever ask him to his face if he had anything to do with Melanie's disappearance?
The last time I was even talking to him, and like I said, I've only maybe hung out with him a couple times, but the last time I seen him face to face, we were at the park in Thornlow in front of my house, and he was sketching out, saying somebody's watching us, and he was freaking us out. And a little while went on for a little bit, and then all of a sudden in the back street, car lights come on and a car sped out of there real fast and went down the dirt road towards Louis' house. And he said, see, I told you somebody was fucking watching us. And I said, okay, but who? And he thought Louis' nephew. And then that's when he looked at me and he said, do you think I killed your cousin? Well, I said, no. You can say yes. I was like,
Jesus, Murphy,
no.
What are you supposed to say?
Why would you think that? Like, I just...
So you didn't think that at the time?
Oh, I did. I wasn't going to tell him I did.
Oh, so you did suspect him?
Well,
yeah,
everybody
she
was
told
talking.
me that before.
Everybody was talking. That's what the rumor was.
Okay.
They just weren't arrested then. Like, it took them a long time to get these boys.
Were you alone when he said that to you? Were you guys alone?
No, I was with
Oh, God, thank God.
Was with us too, his girlfriend.
What was your take on the brother that went missing and later turned up murdered?
I didn't really know, maybe a little bit more than I did, but it was always nice to me. I don't remember, like, they were classified as bad boys. There's a lot of bad boys we used to hang out with. I don't know. It was always nice to me. Like, I believe in my heart, just the way everything went down, I believe in my heart that he was maybe there that night at Louis', but I don't think he participated. And I think he was scared shitless.
Describe your reaction when the police came and told you that they thought you were potentially the target when Melanie went missing.
I was scared shitless. When you first initially messaged me, Angela, you scared the living shit out of me. I wanted to delete my Facebook. I'm like, if these chicks can find me on Facebook, then anybody can find me on Facebook. Her poor mother, like,
I know.
I'd be in the nut house. I'd be in a straitjacket.
Like we've said, you can't always focus on the obvious, because what if it was absolutely somebody else?
Random.
But it looks so obvious because these guys had done this, right? So our minds keep going there.
Like, I always in the back of my head thought they had something to do with it. Maybe not did it, but something to do with it. But then when I listened to the podcast, like, I had no idea who the Sarah girl was. And that makes total sense. That would make total sense.
Well, she lived on the same street.
Yeah.
And
like,
she was mistaken for Mel all the time. She looked just like her, lived on the same street as Melanie was on that night leaving a party. So, and there was another party that night, and it very well could have been at Sarah's house. How do we know? So there's lots of things that could make sense. There's just that piece missing.
Somebody's got to know something. Those weddings in town that night, docs being right there, people coming and going. Somebody had to see something. Somebody had to hear something.
Yeah. So please, everybody, reach out. share what you know. And just by you today, Mel, sharing with us what you know, it sheds light on the whole situation that has been kept in the dark for way too long. So thank you, young lady.
Welcome.
That was a very, very, very big thing for you to do, to reach
Thank you,
out
Mel.
and
Very, very selfless thing that you did, and you didn't have to. And we don't take it lightly.
Mel.
So
Keep
thank
sharing,
you very much.
keep
You're a
caring,
sweetheart.
and say your prayers, because in a couple of weeks it's going to be 24 years. Yeah. Sorry, honey. We cry too. You know what? I was in my backyard today, and it was the second time this week. I'm thinking about Melanie and this great big dark colored, I swear it's a black dragonfly, and it's got little flecks of multicolors all over it. And it just kept hanging around, following me everywhere. And it's like, I know. And that's what Celine always says, that dragonflies are Melanie's thing. So
I know.
Keep sharing, because you know what? The more people that listen to the podcast, holy crap, the people that have been contacting us with stuff.
Oh, it's unreal. Like every morning we get up and we check the phone and we check the email and we check the messenger, and there's something, and it's like, oh my God, so there's something. And that's why we said we've been kind of like running off in all these different directions, but you don't want to leave any stone unturned, and you don't want to not take what somebody says at face value or dismiss it so easily, because we can't do that. We can't put blinders on, because we'll never find out the truth. So
and
really appreciate you.
So you remember the rumors that everybody had going around that Melanie knew the brother that went missing and later turned up dead? We know for a fact Melanie did not hang out with, but this Mel did.
But the two Melanies couldn't have looked more different. How could someone mix them up?
It's possible it was a hired job. That's all I could think of. And whomever set out to target, quote unquote, Melanie Ethier didn't know either of the girls to see them, because how would it be possible? One was black, one was white.
True.
Yeah. If they were going on name only, but why? Why would they target her?
Because they may have thought she knew something.
Well, and not only was she related to Louis Gauthier, the murdered drug dealer, she hung out with one of the nephew's girlfriends. So maybe they were afraid the girlfriend was sharing intel with her, that she knew something about the murder.
Well, oh my gosh, they killed their own brother or nephew because he knew so much about the murder and was going to the police. So why wouldn't they target some other young girl that they thought might have known more? It's a very real possibility. Police even considered it likely enough that they told her so. If only we were certain who the intended victim was, it would narrow down the suspect pool considerably.
We are now going to share with you all new developments since the last episode. So we'll just continue to call these tidbits as they roll in on the daily.
And daily, hourly, minutes.
We delayed our recording tonight for 2 hours because we were so busy reading messages.
And we appreciate it. Please don't stop.
So keep it coming, please.
So a young lady reached out to us to tell us in 2005, Canmore RCMP called her family to say they were given info by a relative of hers who claimed he knew what happened to Melanie Ethier. That man later hung himself within weeks, and we have no way of knowing whether or not the RCMP called Ontario Provincial Police.
Yeah, unfortunately, we did try to do our homework and reach out to see if this tip was ever relayed, but we
can't
had
find
no
out.
luck. No. So
they won't share anything with us.
No. Police had their hands busy with many sightings of Melanie. We know of the other two black girls who were the same age as Melanie, but to throw more into the mix, there was apparently an exotic dancer in Quebec who looked very much like Melanie, and reports were coming in about her too. So many sightings. At the time of Melanie's disappearance, there was a popular movie entitled Fargo. I loved it. That featured a disturbing scene of a body being put through a wood chipper. is there a grain of truth to the wood chipper rumor? Or was it a rumor started to throw people off the trail? Was it because it was such a dramatic scene and they used their imagination to create this horrible rumor? There are some sick individuals out there that get off on this stuff. Go get your head checked. Fuckers.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, that's the thing, right? Just
some people do get off on it, and that's where they
well, it's the number of stories that have been shared with us, whether the actual individuals that have been spoken about to us are guilty of this crime or not. Oh my gosh.
It's some of the stuff that they have done.
Yeah.
And it would take
like,
someone
wow.
just to say,
you can't believe the number of people out there that are fucked.
Shitty.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it would take someone to say, oh, she was probably put through a wood chipper, and then it go viral.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, did you hear this happened?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I remember the movie. I remember that scene. It stuck in my head. It was in 1996. So yeah, I could see that happening.
Well, we've heard
do you know how many times that comes up in other missing cases, though? Like we're talking about our, other ones that we're thinking about doing in the future. And it seems to be a real common theme.
Yes.
And so I think it's very disturbing, especially
if it's not
even
true.
Start something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Who is the sick person that starts this? Like, shame on you.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said in an earlier episode, may they rot in hell.
Amen.
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 So the night Melanie disappeared, bar patrons may have scurried over the border into Quebec for a later closing time. That was common practice in the 90s, as Quebec bars stayed open until 3 a.m. Ontario was just 1 a.m., that is, until May 1st, 1996, when closing time was extended to 2 a.m. So, if patrons at docks wanted to catch the bars in Quebec, they would have left docks before 2 a.m., and perhaps in a rush before the majority of other patrons left. If Melanie's disappearance was due to an accidental hit and run, as there have been rumors about, does anybody in New Liskeard remember someone leaving the bar early that night before closing time? We've heard numerous people state they were there that night. We've reached out to a few people with their suspicions about it being an intoxicated driver leaving docks early, and that it seemed plausible that someone may have hit her with their car on one of the dark sections she would have traveled to get home. While some people dismiss this possibility because they say there was no evidence of a hit and run, i.e. blood. But there isn't always blood when a body gets hit by a car. And if a drunk driver, in fact, hit Melanie, it doesn't make sense that they would take the time to put her body in their vehicle and dispose of her somewhere. Remaining at the scene, risking being exposed and removing the body does not fit the meaning of hit and run. But on the other hand, if she was hit, purposely or accidentally, and not necessarily blood spatter, and if it was a group of individuals involved, it is likely they would have grabbed her to hide evidence. Was it premeditated and planned? A crime of opportunity? Or a complete accident? If it was a group of people involved, was there a leader, one who should be held to higher account for what happened? We will touch base again on the car that was spotted in town that night that may or may not be related to Melanie's disappearance. Seems to be that the same car that was seen outside the Pine Avenue residence where Melanie was watching movies that night was also seen on the bridge at about 2 a.m. with its lights off. Melanie's mom, Celine, made a post a few weeks back on her Facebook page. Let's work together to find Melanie Ethier. She posted about the car with a little more detail than we shared earlier. An older model, perhaps even a 1976 light color car, white, light blue, light gray, with a vinyl roof. We've come up with a partial list. An Eldorado, a Ford LTD, a Chev Monte Carlo, an Olds Cutlass, Ford Elite or Thunderbird, or any other makes and models with vinyl tops that we haven't come across. When someone states an older model, It could be anywhere from 1976 to 1986.
So perhaps after hearing all these different models and makes of vehicles that could be possibilities of this particular car that was cited, maybe after hearing these, this has triggered somebody's memory. So if you have anything, whether you think it's something or nothing, please get in touch with us. Mel's house on Wellington at that time was very, very close to the church corners. And we've mentioned before that we were told there were 3 weddings in town that night. Is it possible that somebody spotted Melanie earlier in the day, maybe when she was out with her friends? And again, after a night of partying and drinking? We heard from one man who had been at a wedding reception that night who lived in town, and he recalls very well that it was a clear night with no rain, and he nor his friends recall anything unusual about the guests or events before or after the wedding he attended. We've asked him to rack his brain, and he doesn't recall anything unusual.
But we did have somebody write into us just this week to tell us that as far as she understood, many attendees from said weddings were questioned, very vaguely, but were questioned by the police.
And there are so many people trying to help him because police have shared nothing, possibly because they have nothing. The public has had no choice but to suspect anyone who seems suspicious. So neighbors, business owners, policemen, they're grasping at straws in an attempt to help bring Melanie home, and we can't fault anybody for doing that. That's what we're asking you to do. We had someone write into us about an abandoned shack they saw as kids about the time that Melanie disappeared. A woman with an abusive ex-boyfriend whom she believed had ties to Melanie back in high school. We had another woman reach out about a very creepy white van she saw a few years back that had been abandoned at an old cottage. I believe the cottage was abandoned as well. As one person put it, I would rather speak and have it come back a bad hunch than a clue to a very long mystery. Another told us a lot of people won't talk. If I knew the answers, I'd be talking all day long. So are people afraid to talk? Are they staying silent to protect family or friends of theirs? We can't help but mention this either. We'd be amiss if we didn't. We interviewed a male who was a teen in 1996. And he remembers after Melanie went missing, getting numerous rides with a cop late at night when walking home under the influence after a couple drinks. Could very well be a real nice cop looking out for teens and getting them home safe. But think about it. If no one heard anything, perhaps Melanie willingly got into a car, trusting the driver to give her a ride home. Not trying to imply a cop necessarily, but a family friend, someone she knew, someone she recognized, someone she trusted.
Yeah, a multitude of theories with no apparent evidence. Is it because all these theories are not the reason behind Melanie's disappearance? Is it because some random solo stranger is behind it and the police really have nothing? If you recall our interview with Michael Arntfield from our last episode, and that man knows his stuff, it's time to release some more information. Michael Arntfield, he says there's no reason why the OPP can't release new information on a case that is more than 20 years old. You're not going to solve a case unless you engage the public through the strategic release of pieces of evidence that will stimulate either tipsters or bring forward people who aren't necessarily aware they have information. He pointed to the Toronto police who actively use social media to release crime scene clues to help solve cases that have grown cold, saying it's an open and active investigation without telling you anything. Those disingenuous tactics worked maybe 10 to 15 years ago, but I don't think anyone believes that anymore, Arntfield said.
Michael is not alone in his thinking, and many citizens are concerned and frustrated with the fact that so little has been released. Here's a message we received from a concerned citizen. I just listened to your third podcast on Melanie's disappearance. I remember when she went missing. My daughter was just a couple of years old. It was a horrible feeling living in a small town knowing someone was out there that had taken Melanie. The odd thing of this whole case was that everything was a secret. It was kept hush-hush for so long. Still was until you started these podcasts. Lately, I hear a lot of people talk about Melanie's disappearance. You've sparked a lot of people's interest. What you three are doing is amazing. I pray that Celine one day will get closure. Good luck and keep it up. The more it gets out there, hopefully someone will spill the beans. To this day, if the public had known more about the case, maybe it wouldn't have gone on this long. The community and many other people have heard more from your podcast than going back to when it first happened. I realize the police are very busy, but too many loose ends after hearing what you three have had to say. I realize some information could not have been made public in case it could have tipped off whoever did this, but I strongly feel that the investigation could have gone differently if the public were made more aware of how the case was unfolding. Seems like a lot of people should have been questioned, and they weren't. And now it's coming up to 24 years. I am praying that this will be the year for closure for Celine and her family.
Melanie's mom, Celine, made a recent post on her Facebook page, and she was pleading to the public to think back and recall details that could possibly help find her daughter. She is asking if you knew anyone who had scratches that looked suspicious around that time. Come forward, reach out to her. She's asking if you purchased an old car from anyone in the year following Melanie's disappearance, described as approximately 1976, light-colored, white, light gray, light blue with a vinyl top, as we mentioned earlier. She's asking if anyone purchased a wood chipper from around the area in late 1996 or 97. Please come forward. The information you may have may be more important than you think. Imagine a mother having to beg her community to help her find her child. Imagine a mother having to even write the words wood chipper while not succumbing to the horrific image in her head. Imagine preparing yourself to learn your child's fate. Imagine 24 years of not knowing where your child is. Imagine someone in your own friggin' community torturing you all these years with their silence. Imagine. Thank you for all your help. Everyone that's reached out. The truth shall set you free. Amen.
Amen.
What if this was your child? How would you feel living in a small town that hasn't shared its secrets? Think about that for a minute. Would you look at every face that you passed as you walked by them in the store or down the street and think they've got to be the guilty party, as though they know the missing piece of the puzzle, but are either afraid or don't want to get involved and do the right thing? It would be very difficult to ever let your guard down, to ever trust anybody. Nobody is ever eliminated as a suspect until the real culprit or culprits are proven guilty, charged, and convicted. So even if something seems so obvious, it may not be known to police already. We've caught ourselves having tunnel vision. It's really easy to focus on the obvious, but we have learned never to assume we or the police know anything. Everyone needs to approach this case with eyes wide open, no blinders. Keep an open mind, please.
Take a breath, Susie Q.
Just that one.
No, it's
I just
that
think I
intense
too,
because you put yourself in the situation and you think, motherfucker, you know what you did. Help this lady.
I think every time I really think about it, I think of one of my kids. Like I just been her so hard in the driveway before when he left. And I'm like, what if that was the last time you even saw your kid?
Absolutely. And someone is walking around that community.
Yeah, some smug fucking prick knows.
I got away with it.
Kill me, man.
But the thing I can live with is that they're going to have to face the maker. That's what I think. And boy, oh boy, I wouldn't want to take that up with me. That's one discussion I would want to have with anybody. Because you've committed their ultimate sin.
You have to look at your best friend every day or talk to her and think, how does she carry on in her daily life? You know, how did she do that back then? Knowing there's a possibility that you may never find them. Like how sorry.
No, it's true. It's like what bothers me the most is New Liskeard is a small town and someone fucking knows something. And you are a piece of crap. I'm sorry. That's it. Mm-hmm. You know what you did. A lot of people know what you did. There's just some cowards out there that aren't sharing it. And
there is an afterlife. And if you want any chance at an afterlife ever, you want any redemption or any forgiveness, then you have to pay the price. You have to come forward. You have to at least, even if you don't want to come forward and you don't want to give yourself up, give somebody something that leads to her body, because
That's right.
This is just insanity and sick. It's sickening.
Well, this is real shit. Okay, this isn't a movie. This is someone's life we're talking about. She has to get up every morning and say, is this the day? And I couldn't imagine it. I couldn't, because I don't even want to put myself there, because I think I'd go completely insane.
It's very emotional. Like, I think we can sit here and talk about, okay, what did we say we're going to talk about tonight on this episode? But every time honest to God, and I'm not a big wimp, but man, every time I insert myself and feel like I try to picture what she feels every day and what we know our friend felt, that's fucked up, man. Nobody deserves that.
No. And I would personally be looking at everybody, and I would be probably one miserable motherfucker. I don't know how it'd go on, but kudos to her, and she's strong, and she's a lovely lady, and I just want to do this for her. I really do.
And what we're here to do is reach out and plead and beg from the public. I've heard so many times, oh my gosh, you should have heard so-and-so talking about, they know what happened to so-and-so. And then when you start to ask questions, oh, no, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to get involved. And that's exactly why cases like this become cold, because people don't want to get involved. They don't want to, they just want to keep their hands clean. And what if it was your child?
Exactly. What if it was not even your child? What if it was your friend's child? What if it was your family member?
I just feel when people hold the answers, those people are almost as guilty as the party that committed the crime, because they don't know how to bring somebody to justice or make it all right. And they're not. They're just worried about their own personal reputation, and they don't want to get involved.
Couldn't even, you know what? I wouldn't even care if it was my brother, my sister. I would do the right thing, because that's who I am. And I can't believe people aren't like that. And I have a hard time with that, because I think people are like me. And I'm learning quickly that there's a lot of sick people out there, and they can live with this. And God, I could never
there's got to be a normal person that knows something that can reach out anonymously. And it's called anonymous for a reason. It can be anonymous. Your name won't get shared. Nobody will ever know that it was you that said it.
And it's just to find her. Like, exactly. We don't even care if you give us a name who did it. We just want to find her. Do you get that?
Just a location.
Yeah. That's
and this is really difficult to, as we said before, how many people are reaching out right now, and the momentum, the information getting out there to the public and the public responding is just crazy right now.
And we appreciate that.
Yeah. And it's really hard to keep up, but understand that we're not overlooking anything and we're not dismissing anything. But there's going to be a lot to be done once the season's over.
Oh, yeah.
So
this is not over.
It ain't over.
No, it's not over till she's home.
I think we also need to let the public know that we have had a lot of psychics and mediums reach out to us with a lot of different stories. And
we're not dismissing it.
No, we don't dismiss any of them. And I think the public needs to know that we all believe in the spirit world, and that some people are capable of communicating with the other side. Susie and Candy are both very intuitive. They hear things. I don't hear things.
I've experienced things in my life a handful of times, but enough times to know that it exists. And Candy and I, we won't get into it, but there's very, very strong and valid reasons for us to believe that the other side exists.
Absolutely.
I wish I was getting something more solid
but you know what about that? It is so comforting for me to have that, because I think, you know what? They're there. They're beside you. They're not gone. And that's my true feelings. And I don't care what anybody says, but I believe that even though they've left this world, they're still beside us. they're still walking with us. They're experiencing what we experience. And sometimes they will give you tidbits of information. And
it is comforting. You're right. Yep.
Yeah. It helps you hold on to when you're very upset.
So we've had a lot of people reach out to us with stories and visions and theories. And they're all very, very different, and they all can't be right. So not that we're dismissing any of them, but we do take them all with a grain of salt. So there you go. We're not dismissing any of it. We're looking into everything, and we shall leave no stone unturned. And we'll leave it at that. So was it a sole individual responsible for Melanie's disappearance? Was it a group of people? Was it an accident, a random isolated incident, a crime of opportunity, a young girl walking alone late at night and something went wrong, got out of hand? Was it planned, but they got the wrong girl, and by the time they realized it was too late? Who has been living with this guilt weighing so heavily upon them? It's highly likely that you have been interviewed by the police. Who knows? Maybe even polygraphed way back when. According to Bill Deverell, many people were polygraphed. Many people volunteered to be polygraphed.
If Melanie's death, and we can only assume she is dead, was indeed an accident, come forward and tell your story before it's too late. Give yourself a fighting chance. Speaking of chance, chances are good, actually excellent, that the Ontario Provincial Police are looking into you right now. We can't begin to tell you the amount of information and the number of names that have been passed on to us thus far. And our listener base is just going to grow. More and more people are going to be compelled to share info. It's just a matter of time until Melanie is found and we find you.
In fact, we've recently received a tip that involves an individual or individuals that's never come up before, at least not in our research. And after speaking with OPP, and so not to impede the investigation, we will not be sharing this information with you, public, at this point in time. But this does bring a newfound hope. And you, the public, felt compelled and moved and obligated to share what you know. And for that, we are extremely grateful.
So we wanted to touch base on how Melanie's disappearance has affected the town of New Liskeard and the surrounding areas, and the collateral damage that has occurred since she's disappeared, and her case has remained unsolved for 24 years. Back then, when it happened, young girls were scared. It changed the way families functioned. It has stolen her mother, Celine's, life. And there's been no closure for her friends, her family, for the community. And we've rarely spoken about the fact that Melanie had a younger sister. We wanted to respect her privacy. She had a younger sister who was 5 years old when she disappeared, Jessie. And Melanie was her second mom. New Liskeard needs to solve this and heal. Melanie's family needs resolution. The damage is unreal. So many people cannot get over this. So many people hope and pray and search for answers every day. But until the people with the answers step forth, this whole town will remain in limbo. Please Bring Me Home is a volunteer-based organization whose mission it is to solicit anonymous tips regarding cold case missing persons across Canada. Their goal is to find the missing and bring them home to their family and friends. We share that goal. Please visit our friends at www.pleasebringmehome.com. They currently have over 4 cases listed. Please share. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Melanie Lambert, and I am the Director of Case Analysis for Please Bring Me Home. My role includes overseeing all of the initial intakes as well as monthly case reports for all of the investigation team members. I analyze each individual case and offer the investigators my suggestions for what should be completed next to move each case forward. Today I will be discussing Sean Mullen's case. On April 3, 2018, Sean, also known as Sandy Mullen, was last seen leaving the West Parry Sound Health Centre in Parry Sound, Ontario. Police have reason to believe that Sean accessed a taxi and returned to his Parry Sound residence prior to his disappearance shortly thereafter. Sean has past tendencies to visit friends or go camping for extended periods of time, but there's no indication this is the case. He had expressed an interest in going out west to visit his family in the past. There has been no use of his health card or any bank transactions. The family notes that he is not the type of person to live off of others and are very concerned for his well-being. There was an unconfirmed sighting of him on Highway 141 in the village of Humphrey on April 18, 2018. He is described as a 59-year-old Caucasian male standing 5 feet 8 inches tall, weighing approximately 145 pounds. He has dark brown hair and greenish blue eyes. If you have any information on the case, please contact your local police service or Crime Stoppers. If you are unable to contact either of these sources, you can reach out to Please Bring Me Home. Thank you.
So if you'd like to leave a tip for Please Bring Me Home, please check out their Facebook page or their website at pleasebringmehome.com. If you have any information about the disappearance of Melanie Ethier, please contact the local OPP, Crime Stoppers, or if you feel more comfortable, contact us at Sheddinglightpodcast. Thank you to all our listeners for all your support and putting us in the top 10% of podcasts based on listener audience numbers. Please, if you can, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes. You can follow us on Facebook, our Buzzsprout podcast site, or on Instagram, and we have future plans for Twitter and YouTube. You can contact us at sheddinglightpodcast@gmail.com, or you can call or text us at 437-374-3030. And don't forget, there is a link to the OPP video released this year on our Facebook page regarding Melanie's disappearance.
Although it's absolutely wonderful that people are engaging in conversation when discussing theories and suspects surrounding Melanie's disappearance, people need to realize that when doing so on a social media platform, that anyone and everybody in the public can read this. So we want to caution folks on this. No doubt guilty parties are monitoring these types of pages, and you'll never be one step ahead of them by discussing it in the public eye. We know everyone's excited, and that's what we've encouraged you to do, and everyone's trying to work together, but let's be smart about it, and let's not discuss names, and let's protect people's reputations. We've gathered masses of info, we've processed it, we've shared it with police, but we've never once mentioned a name of any suspect. So let's work together, and let's do this the right way, everybody.
We were fortunate enough to be able to speak with OPP Superintendent Dwight Thibb about the early days in the investigation into Melanie's disappearance. You may recall, Thibb was a constable with the local New Liskeard Police Department when Melanie went missing and was assigned to the case immediately and full-time.
Good morning, Dwight Thibb. There were 2 officers on duty at the time that she left the one residence to walk home. They were on patrol and stationary across from Doc's Bar at her around that same time that Melanie would have presumably walked out to Armstrong Street. The police of jurisdiction back in the day was New Liskeard Police Service, but the OPP were stationed their offices in New Liskeard as well. So, I mean, they're through Liskeard all the time. So there could have very well been officers right in New Liskeard at the time. I mean, often the OPP would pull up alongside ours and they would chat.
Okay.
So I can't say one way or the other whether the OPP were or weren't there. I know our car was.
Yeah. Okay. And so you had 2 officers on that night?
Yes.
Were you on that night by chance?
I was not. Okay. I believe that was a Saturday night, as I recall. 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon to report Melanie had not come home and she could not locate her. And I was called in at that point.
Do you remember who was on duty that night, Dwight?
No, I do not.
Okay.
No, I don't recall who was on duty.
Yeah.
Yep, she attended our office and, just went over, where Melanie had gone. And she couldn't reach her anywhere. Called, obviously, her friends. And it was at some point that Celine had found out that Melanie had left the residence that had been at, I believe it was right around 2 o'clock in the morning or something, somewhere around that time. Yeah, it was, it was the type of incident we just don't see in small town Ontario. You see that often on the news and in stories that, those things just don't happen in our town. And I would say it was 3-4 months afterward, the high school that Melanie attended, they had a high school dance, and I really noticed it there that a lot of parents are dropping their kids off and picking them up at the dance. So there was a lot of concern because we just didn't know what had happened to Melanie. And I think it was like that for, I would say, 6 months to a year. Then slowly over time, people, get more relaxed, I guess, because it is a small town. But, there was a lot of concern because, we just didn't know. I could tell you from an investigator's standpoint, just after talking to Celine for about 15 minutes in the circumstances around what we knew or what she knew of Melanie's night the night before, we had concerns right away that this is not a young girl that's run away, or had a fight with her mother. I knew the residence that Melanie had been at, some of the kids that she was with, her friends, they were not into alcohol or drugs or anything like that. So it was a bad feeling right from the get-go. And frustrating at times. You get a lead and then you flush it out and be lots of man hours and investigators assigned to it, and you'd think you're on the right track, and then at some point in time you'd prove that no, this person or those persons aren't involved, and then you'd move on to the next lead. So certainly frustrating. I was born and raised in the Liskeard area and kids of my own. The house that Melanie left from was literally, a block from where I lived. So, lots of concern for the town and worries. And, I work with a lot of great investigators, and a lot of them on this case, and, some of them have retired and moved on. And each and every one of the officers that worked on it, we all wanted to solve Melanie's case, and that holds true today. I know it's actively being worked on. I haven't had any involvement in the case since 2007 when I attached to the OPP, but I know it's in capable hands with other investigators. And, it was perplexing. Lots of great work done, and it's a tough one. I really feel for Celine and her family. We had 10 uniform officers, so obviously a small department. Whenever you get a major case like this, small police department, we called the OPP, Ontario Provincial Police Criminal Investigation Section, and they assigned officers and the case manager to it right away. And like I said earlier, we just had a bad feeling about this. This wasn't a girl that slept in somewhere or ran away from home for a while. We just had a bad feeling, so we put the request in for OPP assistance, on that very first day, that first afternoon. There was resources assigned, like we had their K-9 unit attended numerous times. Their emergency response team did numerous searches in and around the Liskeard area in those initial days. So there were certainly certain units within the Ontario Provincial Police that came in to assist, and I can't recall who the detective inspector was that initial day, but he was assigned. I can't even recall who it was in the initial days without having my notes in front of me, but I know Bill Deverell was assigned to it full-time later on. So I can't recall exactly who was assigned specifically those first days. Yeah, I can tell you, right on the very first Sunday, there was only maybe, 3 hours of daylight left. So we called out as many officers as we could and the volunteer fire department. We did a search focusing on the shore of the lake and the river just for those 3 hours, just in case Melanie had, fallen and hit her head or something like that. And then early on in the following weeks, I believe it was in the first week or so, the emergency response team of the OPP searched between the residents Melanie left and her residence. So all roadways, pathways, back lanes, it was literally an entire search looking for any signs that might lead to evidence. So that was done early on, and then at some point, and it might have been when Bill was on the investigation, I can't recall when it was, but the next was a door-to-door canvass. So that was knocking on the door, asking, a set of questions if anybody had seen or heard anything. So that was done, and that wasn't just Pine Street. It was all the houses and apartments, again, between the house that Melanie was visiting and her residence.
Okay. But no homes were searched? No.
There was a lot of searches done. It's kind of expanded outward from the downtown core. And I don't know if there was anything concrete evidence-wise that had us search out Dawson Point. There was numerous places along the ditches and whatnot. And our only thought, as I recall back in the day, was if somebody would have grabbed Melanie and they had a vehicle, would it not make more sense to exit the municipality out Dawson Point Road as opposed to coming out on the main street where clearly they might have seen the officers sitting there across from that hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we had helicopters up early flying along all the ditches, of all the roads leading into and out of the town. And yeah, so it was just basically an expansion of the searches from the downtown core. There was a lot of tips. A lot of them were what the individual thought were a sighting of Melanie. There was another young girl in Liskeard that had a lot of similar features as Melanie, and it turned out to be this young girl. There was a lot of tips initially, but then there was a lot of through media and whatnot. We would do press releases, and it generated more tips. And I think tips are still coming in, obviously slow. It's a lot slower now, but they're still getting tips from time to time. I have no idea what the tips contain or what the say. I'm not attached. Yeah, I wouldn't even be able to hazard a guess over the 10 years, pretty much 10 years that I was on it, how many tips we would have received, but it was quite a few for sure. And there was hundreds and hundreds of interviews. Persons of interest, I can't even take a guess on that. Like in the early days, there was a few people that obviously any investigation that is you and your listeners can appreciate. You kind of focus on, Melanie's inner circle, and then it expands from there.
Did you know Sarah?
I talked to her a few times after Melanie disappeared, and I knew her to see her. I think they even went to the same high school, as I recall, but I'm not sure. I didn't know her well.
Okay. So did she have any run-ins with the police prior to Melanie's disappearance?
That I don't recall, and if I did, I wouldn't say anyways. I couldn't get into that, but I certainly don't recall that.
We've had some people say a case of mistaken identity, most likely for Sarah. So we were just wondering if there was any known concern for Sarah before Melanie went missing, because people have kind of indicated that there was concern for her safety.
Yeah, I don't recall that, and I don't think there's any truth to that myself, but I certainly don't recall it.
There were 2 hitchhikers outside docks the night Melanie went missing. Do you know if they were ever questioned?
I do recall us finding out who, and I think there were 2 young ladies, as a matter of fact. We ended up finding out who they were, and they got dropped off at Diamond Township.
Somebody wrote to us to tell us there was a convenience store across from docks called Night Owls, and they were wondering if perhaps they had video surveillance back then.
I can say that we never retrieved any video there, but I don't think that they had video back then. I don't recall anything about video back then. I gotta think that they didn't have video there back then, or we would have. That's certainly something that we would have retrieved and viewed for sure.
And then there was a party on Pine Avenue that night that everybody seems to be aware of, but nobody seems to know where the party was. But I'm pretty sure the police know, and therefore probably question people from that party. Is that something you're allowed to comment on, that you did interview people or not?
I don't recall that. I know like I said, we did the door-to-door canvas. I'm aware of one resident that there were, I don't know, maybe a half a dozen people there, but it wasn't a party. It was, I'm talking people in their mid-50s, early 60s. I don't recall anything about a big party.
In the OPP video released this year, there was a car spotted outside the Pine Avenue residence by Melanie's friend, but it's come to our attention that there was a white car that was spotted on the bridge as well. Was that something that was known right from day one of the investigation?
I do recall taking statements from her early on, and because we asked what route she went and whether that she had saw anything out of the ordinary. I don't recall anything about a white car. I'm not sure, but she might have talked about a vehicle that kind of drove by her on Pine Street, but I don't recall any discussion about a white car. I don't know where that came from.
Okay. But the car that she saw, it was only announced to the public this year, and 23 and a half years after Melanie went missing. So we just kind of wondered why, because very little was ever released about the case, if that was considered holdback evidence or it wasn't considered important at the time.
I can tell you that it's not something that we did not release on purpose. I got to think that it was just something that we didn't feel had anything to do with her disappearance. I don't think there was a lot to it, actually.
And then the tip about Melanie being spotted on the bridge. Do you know if it was at the top or bottom, east or west side?
Yeah, I don't recall that.
The boys that she was with that night, do you know if some or all or none of them were polygraphed?
Yeah, but I can't get into those types of specifics about the investigation. I apologize for that, but as you can well imagine, in any investigation, as I said earlier, in any disappearance, the investigation obviously focuses on the inner circle, family, friends, and whatnot, and certainly those that would have been in and around the area where she was last seen. So I can't get into specific evidence and what was done and what wasn't done. I could be quite honest. As much work that was done on that investigation and the amount of time that I spent on it personally, to this day, I still don't know what happened to Melanie. And I think all the investigators, I don't think, we just don't know. And it's certainly not for a lack of investigative hours and a lot of good police work being done. It's just one of those cases that it's going to take that one special tip to come in that's going to, break it wide open. Mm-hmm. And I know it's being actively worked on, and I firmly believe that someday it will get solved. I would just encourage anybody that's listening to your podcast, if they have any information, no matter how small they think it might be, to call it into the police, because one little piece of the puzzle sometimes is all it takes for officers to open the investigation up and maybe go down a road that they haven't gone down before. So I would encourage that for sure. And if they're not comfortable passing the information on to the police directly, then go through Crime Stoppers. They want to remain anonymous. It's definitely going to take that one tip to come in to solve this. And we all want this for Celine and Melanie's sister. And I thank you, ladies, too, for keeping this out there in the public, because, like I say, it's gonna take that tip or that call to come in from the public to help us.
So, girls, what did we learn from that? Candy, what did you take from that interview?
Well, not very much. I don't know. I don't want to get myself in trouble, but I have a hard time with some memory loss. And there's been a lot of information that we've received about Sarah going to the police, and it's just confusing to me. Let me just say it's confusing. I don't know.
Such a big case can have so many, I guess, memory lapses, eh? Is that kind of what I took from it? Is that?
Well, it's such a big case. And how do you forget certain things? Because what we've learned, we'll never forget.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Well, what I found interesting, because I was the one fortunate enough to be able to interview both Dwight Thibb and Bill Deverall, the OPP detective on the case. Bill claimed that there were 2 OPP officers on duty that night, and they were stationed across from docks. And when I spoke with Dwight Thibb, he claimed that there were 2 new Liskeard police officers on duty that night, stationed across from docks. And they were definitely not OPP. So it's possible one or the other is mistaken, or maybe there were 2 officers from the local police department and 2 from the OPP, and therefore 4 officers on duty that night. Were they in separate cruisers, or were they paired up in partners? So after interviewing both of them, we have no clue in hell how many police were actually on duty that night.
And I get it. They'd be across from docks because people get out and they get rowdy, and you don't want to see anybody drink and drive. So I get that there'd be police out.
It was 24 years ago, and we have to understand, well, I think both of them made comments and jokes about their memories.
Yes.
I mean, we joke about it. We're in our 50s, and I think they're a little past us.
I just want to correct this. I want to correct Angela. I'm not 50 yet. Thank you very much. Right. And that's Candy. These old broads, yes, they have memory loss. I'm pretty good. I think next year it might hit me.
It's going to hit you. Trust me. It'll hit you. But
I know.
No, when listening to it, I think, okay, we're just getting into it. We've been delving in for the last 4 or 5 months. So things are fresh in our minds. But certain individuals that have come up as a case of mistaken identity, you think those names and those individuals, those names will be ingrained in your memory forever. And I don't quite understand why there's so much memory lapse, but again,
well, I don't think
maybe it's age.
Yeah, I don't think that he didn't remember, and we speak of Sarah, but that the memory of Sarah only began after Melanie's disappearance, that there was no recollection of having any run-ins with her, et cetera, before then. And very well may be the case.
Right? But we've heard by many people that she did go to the police. So I'm just confused. And maybe people have their information wrong, or maybe
people are sending people on a wild goose chase.
Absolutely. Right? And we're learning that.
Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, are we learning that?
Yeah, never dismiss any theory until proven not, which pretty much leaves everything wide open because the case is not solved. So every theory is plausible at this point.
And when all was said and done, were you girls disappointed in that? Did we glean any information from that?
Well, I was on with you and I was like, I wanted more. But I get it. Sometimes being the police, they don't want to give too much because it could screw something up. I get that, but I wanted more. I was left wanting more. But we got what we got, and we thank him for spending time with us. And he seems concerned and really wants this case to have an ending that Melanie's found.
Mm-hmm. So we thank you very much, Superintendent Thibb, for sharing your early memories. And we just really wish you could enlighten us a little more. And it's understandable because he still is employed by the OPP. So it's an open investigation and he can't say much at all. Melanie's case has been handed off several times over the course of the last 24 years within the OPP and police services, simply due to title or duty successions, reassignment, and amalgamation into Temiskaming Shores. But there have always been officers consistently assigned to this case. A number of cases handled by the OPP's North Unsolved Homicide Investigation Team have been successfully solved in the past. So it does provide confirmation that these continuing police efforts can bring a person to justice. Certainly, it can be very challenging for them not having any or many physical clues as to what happened, even with a substantial number of statements and tips. And as time passes, it presents another problem in that people who have not talked to the police about what they know may believe their information is not important. Police continue to receive tips which are actively followed, and this shows the hearts of a caring community that wants this case solved.
Our intent is to keep cold cases in the light and compliment the police in their investigations. We are simply overwhelmed by the listener response regarding Melanie Ethier's case, whether it be a tip, a memory, or just reassurance that we moms are doing a good job on shedding light on this 24-year-old cold case. We have accomplished what we have set out to do, and that was to engage the public to work together. You have put your trust and your faith in us, and we cannot thank you all enough. It's difficult not to sound boastful when we say feel like we have maybe engaged some of you that otherwise may not have spoken to police out of fear for some reason. We don't take it lightly in the least, and we recognize the courage that it takes to speak up. Bless you all. We have made a commitment to Melanie and to ourselves that she will be found. It is very, very difficult to put into words how living and breathing her case for the last 5 months can consume you and sometimes break you. But in comparison to 24 years, there are no words. We leave you all today with the reassurance that we're not closing the door on Melanie. It is open, so please continue to reach out.
At this point, we want to thank all our listeners, all the people who reached out to share information. Thank you, Celine, for allowing us into your life and having the honor of sharing Melanie's story. Thank you, family, friends, and the community. Without your support, this podcast would not be possible. As we reach the end of the season, we will continue to shed light on Melanie. My friends, life is a journey that challenges us daily. The easiest way to contribute is by doing the right thing. We wish you nothing but peace and love. Amen.
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 Angela here, and I just want you all to know that the file will remain open for as long as Melanie is missing. I'm the stoic one of the bunch, but don't let that fool you because this case has affected me deeper than I let on. So please keep listening, keep caring, keep sharing. Please help Melanie finish her journey home. Thank you.
Although this entire season has been dedicated to finding Melanie Ethier, we want to remind our listeners that our entire podcast is dedicated to the memory of our dear, sweet friend, Nolan. We love you, Nolan.
Love you.
Amen.
The fall